everyone, and welcome to Coast Connections. On this edition, we're going to talk about lighthouses, these beautiful, iconic structures that we see all up and down the coast. There's 27 of them that are still staffed, and it's our honor this evening to speak with Caroline Woodward, who is the Lightkeeper at Leonard Island Light Station off the coast of Tofino. Welcome, Caroline. I'm so glad you were able to get off the island in this weather and make it to the studio this time.
Thank you, Liz. It is very good to be here, finally.
So provide us a little bit of context. Where is Leonard located?
It's at the head of Clayoquot Sound. And so if you're on holiday and you're in Cox Bay or near Chesterman Beach or strolling along any of those two beaches, you can see parts of Leonard Island, and you can see the beam going around at night. So it was placed there in 1904 because there's so many little rocks and islets and dangerous spots, and it was placed there to warn people of the perilous rocks and so forth going forward until they get to Tofino Harbor. Yeah.
It's so nice to see that you're obviously a woman, a female lightkeeper, which is great. I think people sometimes don't really think that it's a gender neutral type of job. And you also man the station with your husband, Jeff. Yes, and I just want to tell our viewers that tonight, the pictures that you're seeing on set were all taken by Jeff George, Caroline's husband. And there also, a lot of his photography is featured in the book that Caroline has written as well, which we'll be talking about this evening. So Caroline, lighthouses, we all look at them and go, oh, how beautiful and idyllic, and I wonder really what goes on there. You know, a day in the life of a lightkeeper when everything is going well. What exactly are you doing?
Well, one of us, and in my case, it's Jeff, is the early bird of the pair. I'm the night owl, yes. Yeah. And so one of the main things we do is weather reports every 3 hours. So Jeff is up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. depending on the daylight saving situation. In the summer, he's up at 4 a.m. and his first weather report is at 4:40 a.m. So that's accessible to all the mariners and aviators too, our weather reports. And then we go on to look after anywhere between 8 to 12 buildings on the site. Some people just see that tower and they imagine that we all live in the tower, and actually we don't. We have houses, little red and white houses to live in. Then the day goes on, we do a lot of maintenance. We do our scientific sampling. Certain stations have seawater samples. The station at Estevan has an oxygen quality, air quality sampling contract going on. And we have different kinds of things that we're on the lookout for during the day to keep us safe as well. And so we're pressure washing cement sidewalks and stairs, and making sure the station is running off its electricity or its generators. We keep the generators going. So there's just, basically if you think of, making sure there's no rain coming through the roof and no flooding coming up through the basement, and preserving good water.
What is your water source?
We use cisterns
in
most of the stations. At Chrome Island, we worked, when we did relief there, it has a desalinizing operation there. At Pachina Point, where we've also worked, there's a nice spring in the nearby that's being utilized to provide water.
Nice.
So on our station at Leonard, there's 3 5,000-gallon cisterns under each of the 3 houses, and we have a 1904 built cistern that holds 18 to 20,000 gallons. Nobody really knows for sure.
You've never run out of water?
Never. No. And that's for fire suppression and pressure washing and the gardens. Yeah. So so a day in the life when everything is going well. The early shift person does his or her radio broadcasts up to Prince Rupert Coast Guard that handles communications. and we call specials if the weather deteriorates. You know, if fog rolls in closer than 2 miles to the station, we have to alert mariners and aviators to that fact. So we call special weathers for that, for example. Or if the sea suddenly really kicks up, and we had reported very benign conditions at our regular weather broadcast, then it's up to us to say, you know, the seas are now, you know, X amount high,
Right.
and you know, those in the know will check their marine communications channel number 8 in our area, and they'll know, ooh, it's getting thumpy out there. You know, this is not a good day to take my nephew out fishing for the first time or whatever, right? I usually work the evening shift, so I usually start at noon or 1 o'clock, and I go until 10 or 11 o'clock doing my weather reports. And during the day, there's just endless chores. I mean, you know, maintaining and cleaning and painting and mowing and weed whipping and collecting things and keeping an eye on the water, noticing what's going on out there. You know, what are those 2 teenage boys doing in a low little skiff with no life jackets on fishing? And, you know, don't they see the channel is kicking up? And, you know, watching surfers that are getting kind of far out in Cox Bay. Are they caught in a rip tide, you know? Do their buddies on shore notice, or are they too busy having fun, or, you know? So we're always looking at the water.
I should also add too that you're actually Coast Guard employees. You're employed by the federal government. You're basically part of the Coast Guard.
That's right.
So what is your relationship with the Coast Guard that's off the island then?
Right.
How do you interact with the Coast Guard?
We are in touch by the ALAN, the Automated Lightkeepers Network, which have these big clunky phones that look like something out of the 70s, and that connects our circuit to the weather reporters who are picking up our broadcasts up in Prince Rupert. Now, there was a centralization that went, we used to do that with Tofino radio.
Right.
But, you know, it's now just a radio in Victoria or in Prince Rupert. So there are 6 groups on our circuit, 6 lighthouses, and we are called in to give our weather report. You know, what's the sky doing? What's the visibility? Is there any precipitation? What form? How high is the swell? How high are the waves? Is there anything else going on? A thunderstorm? Aviators really need to know about that. And yeah, so that's the radio part. And then we deal with ships. We just dealt with the ship the day before we left to go out on this leave. And so the ship came in with a workboat to pick up all the returns of the winter, you know, some construction waste, all our recycling, an overpack with broken glass and old fluorescent tubes and things inside of it, and old batteries, things that you don't want spilling or shattering anywhere on board, and an old fuel barrel. You know, all that went down our high line with Jeff running the winch engine down to the workboat. And so I fed them all cookies, you know, and kept the dogs out of the way and chatted with them and took their cargo for us. I took that away and stored the paint in our paint shop. And yeah, so that with ships, it's usually, you know, the crews come on shore, and there are all these hale and hearty young people, and so they're tasked to either inspect our high lines and winches, or to help us move stuff in or stuff out. And
how often would you get like grocery shopping? How often do you have groceries delivered, or
our groceries come in once a month?
Okay.
And they come in by Coast Guard helicopter.
Okay.
And so we order from Thrifties in Victoria.
Keeping it local.
Yes, online. And
they've got the send dial, but they also have the Lighthouse dial.
Yeah. And so yeah, we do that, and we order that, and so that's always a very good day. It's very sad when the helicopters can't make it because it's too windy or too foggy. It's often
for
fog.
sure.
Fog is the real killer for our pilots, but we want them to be safe, you know, and so they're always checking with us for weather too, and local conditions, you know, and certain boats know that too, and they check with us. But yeah, so our groceries once a month, and then our office in Victoria, that's sort of our main base, whereas the northern stations deal with the office in Seal Cove or Prince Rupert.
Okay.
That's, that's their admin sort of center. So that's who we send our requests for leave to. And that's if we need supplies, like, everything from steel-toed gumboots to certain cables, nails, all the nitty-gritty of, keeping our roofs on and, our decks and, the little, trying to think of the right word, the cable inside of weed whippers.
Oh, yes.
The little orange things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Little bundles of those. So yes, we have quite a wonderful array of things that come in when our time comes.
You have to be a bit of everything. You have to be a mechanic. You have to be obviously, a good cook. You have to be super organized. I mean, if you forget any of those things that you need on your monthly deliveries, you really have to adjust your lifestyle quite a bit. But as a lightkeeper, you must see also a lot of amazing marine wildlife and things around. Beautiful wildlife around this life station. What are some of the most unusual things you've seen there?
Oh, I would have to say just this winter up at Kane's Island, where the Quatsino Light Station is, at the mouth of Quatsino Sound, we had hurricane force winds. So those are pushing 64 knots, like 64 knots and above is a hurricane force wind. And so we were dallying with, 62 to 63 knots of wind coming in and tremendous gusts.
Sustained winds?
Real gusty winds, and so they peak at that and pull back and peak and pull back. And but yeah, hurricane force is officially 64 knots and beyond. And we heard this thump thump, and I think we were watching a DVD movie or something, because we couldn't get TV up there in the house that we were in, so we got to watching movies together at after supper in between weather reports. And I turned around and there wasn't anything, and I had to go out the opposite way that night with our dog to get to the radio room. And I couldn't go out the other door because the wind would have just tore it off its hinges. It was that bad. So I went down the basement to take a door that was a more sheltered door to exit from. And there were two beautiful little white and pale birds, like with little gray and black markings. And I looked at them and I'd never seen them before.
Blown off course.
Blown way off course, because these were McKay's buntings that should have been in western Alaska.
Wow.
And they got banged down the coastline by all these ferocious storms and we looked in our bird books, and it's the rare. So that was a wonderful sight. But on my first trip out to visit Jeff, when he was first starting as a relief keeper, back in 2007. He was posted to Egg Island, and it was one of those things where, we need you for a couple of weeks. So up he went in June. And he was still there in July, and he was still there in August, and I'm sending him parcels with more clothing and more inserts for his work boots and chocolate, the Globe and Mail, books, and finally he sort of said, he talks to our people, he says, well, my wife, I haven't seen my wife for 6 weeks, it would really be nice to have her visit, and if there's a helicopter going up there already, they can drop me off, and it worked out perfectly. So I could read you a little bit about one of the best sightings of humpback whales.
Absolutely. And I just want to let viewers know that Caroline is not only a light keeper, but she's also an author. And this is your book, fabulous title, Light Years by Caroline Woodward. This is a fascinating read. It'll appeal to mariners, gardeners, foodies, outdoor enthusiasts, wildlife enthusiasts. It's a wonderful, wonderful book, Caroline. So thank you for putting that out there. It's got such insights into what you do as a light keeper. So I'd be very happy for you to read a passage from that.
Yes. I started writing poems too, like Japanese form poems. Maybe it's because we look out and That's it.
Next stop, Japan.
Next stop, Japan. And this one is called a choka. So it's got 5 and 7 syllable lines. It ends with 2 7-syllable lines. It doesn't have to rhyme, doesn't have a particular meter or length. And it was because when I finally got up to see Jeff, I would tramp around and follow him to all the spots where he did, you know, his weather observations and so forth. And I look at the charts in the radio room all around the island, right? And there were all these wonderful names. And so I call this the Finding More Light, a choka. Sorrow Bay, Grief Point, Sad Rocks, Desolation Sound, Old Fears, Blind Alley, Morbid Channel, Grim Lookout, Good Hearts Cove, Safe Harbor.
Wow.
And yeah, I had fun with that, and the designer of the book had fun placing them, along with other reports of a lightkeeper's request in 1902 for a bathroom with running water, which was refused.
Oh,
Yes.
great.
Yes. So here I am on Egg Island. I tromped along with Jeff every 3 hours on his afternoon shift weather reports to learn how to read the skies and the seas, to decipher the thermometers inside the Stevenson screen, to study the Beaufort wind scale, and to listen silently as the most northerly light stations called in their reports to the Prince Rupert-based weather station. Egg Island was in the middle of 2 Coast Guard radio zones. Good evening, lights, the weather collector's voice from MCTS, which means Marine Communications and Traffic Services, in Prince Rupert began. And I listened to the Langara, Green, Vanilla, Triple, McInnes, Boat Bluff, Ivory, Addenbrook, and Dryad Light Station weather reports. These names will be very familiar to fishermen and tugboat captains up and down the coast here. Then Comox at the time, MCTS, collected the reports from the light stations at Pulteney Point, Scarlet Point, Egg Island, Pine Island, Cape Scott, and Quatsino. Thank you. Good night, lights, the cheerful radio voice signed off when the last weather reports were taken at 10:30 p.m. Good night, lights. Imagine hearing that next time you were on a fishboat, tugboat, sailboat, yacht, cruise ship, or ferry going up the BC coast to Alaska, and you see the sweeping bands of light from a lighthouse in the dark, all by itself. Wish us all a good night. When I look out now and I see a lone boat on the horizon, I sing, "Good night, brave little boat, into the dark void," even when I know the boat is a massively powerful beast of a tugboat. We all know the ocean is the biggest beast of all. So that just got me going, and that's when I was still deciding, oh, I could still do this part-time and do my very intense publishing job, and Jeff would come back, but it seemed like he wasn't coming back. He ended up being on Egg Island for 4 months, you see, and then he got a job at Trial Island just off Victoria and Oak Bay. So I didn't like living apart. We like each other. We've been together over 30 years and so forth. Now, but I got to Egg Island and I slept and slept on Egg, with only the sounds of the wind in the evergreens, the cries of the seabirds, and the comforting push and pull of the ocean swells. One night, humpback whales circled the island, singing their eerie whale songs, some basso profundo, others swooping up into the Heldon tenor range. I had to pinch myself. Imagine falling asleep to whales singing deep sea lullabies. And that's when I just knew that, if I was ever going to write books again, I'd written 4, and then life got very busy. Mom, bookstore and toy store, being a publisher's rep. All of a sudden 15 years went by and I'd done one little literacy book, for adult learners in there, and I was too busy peddling everybody else's books, thousands of them every year, spring and fall and winter. And so I just thought, well, Jeff's a beautiful photographer. he writes too, and he was doing, you know, book reviews and other things. And so I just thought, I want to write again. I thought I would quilt and do other crafty things that other light keepers do, but you know, I just have to focus on the writing, you know, and but most light keepers have real hobbies.
Yes, you'd have to. Let's talk a little bit about the psychology of living together as a couple on a lighthouse. Now, in a long-term marriage, as yours is, even in a short-term one, how do you do that? How do you provide each other some space? How do you keep from not throwing the other one over into the water?
Overboard somewhere, somewhere where you can do that. It is really important. Now, we had worked together before running our book and toy store in the village of New Denver in the Kootenays for almost 8 years. And we worked shifts then too, because we were still bringing up our little boy. And so Jeff would go over in the morning and open the store and do the bookkeeping and get that all set up and rolling. Seamus was off to school, and I'd go over in the afternoon. And then things got a little complicated when he became a village councillor, and I'd be singing in the choir at night, and Seamus would need a soccer coach or whatever, you know, life, busy life.
And you know, I'm wondering is as lighthouse keepers, is there any psychological testing for living in isolation? Do they screen for that when you apply for the position? Is there any screening for that? Like,
not really. You know, if you say though that, say you've run a fish boat.
yeah.
And it's you've been out there, husband and wife, running a boat, or partners of any gender, right? And you've done that for a few years. Well, that lets human resources know that you have some of the right stuff, because if you don't have it when you get there, it is a real challenge. You know. Working shifts is good because you automatically get some space. One of you is asleep while the other one is up at some ungodly hour in the morning. So that provides you with some very important space to have your own time and thoughts. And having absorbing hobbies, whether they're wood carving, quilting, or writing, and anything, that gives you time too. And some people have you know, their own little shed or basement or area where they can go to. And I think it's very important that you both love the life, that you both appreciate the wilderness, that you love the big ocean, that you go, oh, you know, we sort of encourage the wind to get stronger. Let's have a hurricane knot or two here. You know, that you both love that kind of thing, you know.
You'd have to. Yeah, absolutely would have to.
Yeah, because you know, there's nobody there to do mediation counseling, you know.
Exactly.
You really have to, you know, give yourself time to cool off and really love and understand and support each other in that way.
And you've been on the lights for about 10 years now.
Yes,
right? Yeah,
it's
so you've
there.
got a proven partnership and everything.
Yes. Yes.
Now, on days when everything goes horribly wrong,
right,
and you're in touch with the Coast Guard, you're the eyes and ears for the Coast Guard, that type of thing, because I'm sure there's many days where things are very harrowing on a lighthouse station.
It's true, and some of it, of course, because of privacy issues and also legal issues, I can't even speak to, because there's going to be investigations and so forth underway, and just family privacy and so forth. And but it is extremely sad, you know, when you're helpless and you're listening to a radio and you know people are drowning and they've gone down in a boat or in a plane, and you know, and you're sitting there on your green rock. And that's it, and you just feel terrible, because you're in the same weather they are, and you know what the elements are up to.
Exactly.
And it's that I find personally very difficult. And then, you know, when there's things like where you're, you know, when people like literally wash up on your island and they think they're adventurous, but they've just put themselves and their children or whoever at real risk. And we have to arrange an evacuation for them because they're in way over their head. And so, yeah, we sometimes do play a very active role in coordinating and communicating.
Which is why we need staffed lighthouses here on the coast. And an automated station does not provide all the information that human-to-human contact and communication can.
Oh, it never
And
can,
you've
yeah.
really outlined that really well in your book as well, Caroline, Light Years. There's a lot of really, really good information in there for anybody who's living on the coast. They'll find it fascinating. And also, I just want to quickly mention, you also have the Alaska Highway Two-Step book that is also out. We'll talk a bit more about that on another episode because we're running out of time here very rapidly. But what's one of the most mysterious things that have ever washed up on shore?
Oh, we've had some just strange little things. A beautiful thing was Jeff went and found one of those gorgeous little glass balls, just a beautiful little old Japanese fishing float.
Yeah.
Now, all the old-time lightkeepers have dozens of these, you know, but this was our first one, and it was lovely. So that was lovely because we'd looked and hiked and looked and hiked everywhere we'd looked, Cape Scott, Pachina, everywhere, and but no. And one time a cork from a wine bottle came in, and I thought, Chateau Neuf de Pop, 1982,
Wow.
I think it was, and I looked it up and that was from that bottle of red wine would auction for anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000.
Wow.
And I was thinking, now, what was going on when that bottle of very fine red was popped, and where did that happen, you know?
Very interesting.
And you know, but we have to also seriously though look for flotsam and jetsam,
Sure.
because sometimes, yes, we've had parts of boats roll in, and sometimes it's fine. It's a life preserver that's washed overboard, as we have found.
And
Other
eyes
times,
and ears on the lights.
yes, you know, other times it's the first sign of a ship sinking, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Caroline, unfortunately, we've run out of time for this episode. We'll have you back again to talk a little bit more about exactly some of the more dramatic things that you do there on the lighthouse. You're also a master gardener and a cook, and as Master Chef Canada wants people like you, I'm sure. So thank you so much. And thank you to our viewers for joining us this evening. And next time you go past a lighthouse, you have a little more information about what's going on there behind the beam. We'll see you next time on Coast Connections. Thank you.